Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome to my first post 2022 video covering discussing the 2024 United States Senate elections. Now, this isn't my first ever video covering these elections, but it's the first one after the November 2022 midterms. I did make a video back in July of this year talking about how unfavorable this Senate map is to the Democratic Party and how the GOP could potentially, have one, could potentially have make major gains in these Senate elections if they have a very favorable year. They're already bound to pick up a couple of seats, but anyways, I hope you guys are having a great day. And yeah, let's just get right into the video. So, in this video, we're going to be talking more specifically about what states I believe the GOP, is going to target, what Senate races are going to be that are held current, that have Democratic incumbents currently, that the GOP is going to be focusing the most on. And to me, there are really four races in particular that come to mind. There are a couple more. I would say six in total is the amount that we're going to see on the map today. Um, for the record, I will be putting out a 2022 my first 2024 Senate prediction after the Georgia runoff takes place, because I do imagine that that's when most political sources like Yapem's maps will probably release an official map for the 2024 elections. So now we're just going to be using their map with the Class 1 Senate seats, which is the Senate class that will be up in 2024. So as you can see, there are only 33 seats filled in on here. There will be a special election in Nebraska, though, since Ben Sasse will be resigning from the Senate early next year, and so but it's going to be safer, because unless something crazy happens, Nebraska is a very red state, so there won't be any contention there. And the map is really unfavorable to the Democrats, because unlike in 2022 when it was a pretty neutral map with, Republicans having a limited amount of pickup opportunities, really they only had four realistic flips, and, looks like that the Democrats are actually going to gain a seat in the Senate, after winning 50 seats by flipping Pennsylvania, and it looks like they're going to hold on to Georgia with Raphael Warnock, so I do believe that in the next Congress, Democrats will have a 51-49 Senate majority. But based on this map, you see a lot of states here that are, you see Democratic incumbents, all across the country, and, very competitive states, and, some in, pretty red states like Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia, which will be states that will be included on this list as as prime targets for the GOP. Whereas you can see for Republicans, they're only defending 11 seats, including the one in Nebraska, the two seats in Nebraska, because it's pretty much guaranteed that a Republican will win there. And they only have two really, mildly competitive races out of those two. Those are Texas and Florida. And considering, how Florida is a state that's trending heavily to the right, and seeing how well the GOP did there in the midterms, I wouldn't really, if I was, if I was a Democratic operative, I would not really be spending too much time on Florida. Texas, I think, could get interesting with Ted Cruz. It seems like he's gonna run for reelection, but then again, we're talking about GOP targets, that for the targets for Democratic incumbents that will probably be targeted by the GOP this year, and even then, I think Texas is a little bit in question as well. But once again, we are just doing this about the Republican Party's best pickup opportunities. So we're going to start by filling in. This isn't an official prediction, but this is basically all of the seats that I think are pretty much guaranteed to go to either party, or that really are not super competitive. Democrats, hold 23 seats in this class right now. So if and obviously not all of them will go red, but a good chunk of them are in very blue states, or are in very competitive states. Pennsylvania, I don't really think is going to be too competitive. Dave McCormick running there could make things interesting, but again, this isn't by margin. This is just me filling out the races that I don't really think are going to be top targets for the GOP, and of course, we'll put in all of their states. Of course, this map will look a little bit more comprehensive when we get the full 2024 Senate map. Of course, Nebraska will have two elections, but once again, this is a different map. And then Texas and Florida are already held by Republicans, so they obviously wouldn't be targeting those as pickups. They already have them. So that leaves us with about six toss-up races, or six races that I believe the GOP is going to be funneling the most money into. And so you may be surprised to see that there are Democratic incumbents in states like Montana, West Virginia, and Ohio. And these states are going to be heavily targeted by the Republicans simply because, it's going to be a presidential cycle. While the Democratic incumbents here are very strong, they all have a very good chance to lose. And I would, consider all of them in a lot of trouble. Although, then again, they could all win, in my opinion. I think that a lot of people have counted out these incumbents, but we'll talk more about that. Yeah, in a in specificity later on. But first, we're going to be putting out what I think is probably the GOP's best chance to pick up a seat, and that's West Virginia. So West Virginia, Joe Manchin, the incumbent Democrat, a very moderate, blue dog kind of Democrat. Obviously, I'm sure you've heard of him. He is going to be running for re-election, or at least it appears like it. He has made it. He's pretty much made it clear that he intends to run. Whether or not he does run, I think does affect the competitive nature of this race. If he doesn't run, it's going to be an assured Republican flip, just like when Jay Rockefeller retired from his seat in 2014, Republicans easily picked that up when Shelley Moore Capito easily won that race. But Manchin, I do think, is going to run for re-election, and Republicans already look like they're going to have a pretty contested primary here. Alex Mooney, a current congressman from West Virginia, who's very fairly popular. He's pretty Trumpy, which works in a state like West Virginia, which is super super red and voted for Trump by almost 40 points in 2020. I think that does really help him, and I think he will be the GOP nominee. It does look like, though, that I think there is a good chance, though, that the governor of West Virginia, Jim Justice, who actually used to be a Democrat but switched to the Republican Party in 2017, runs, and I think he would be, personally, I think in terms of electability, he would be a better candidate to take on Manchin, but I don't really think that, I think that Manchin would be an underdog to either of these candidates. I personally think that the race, I think that Manchin has a chance. You'll see my official rating, in my first prediction. But I think Manchin has an underrated chance at reelection. I think that he's definitely the only Democrat who has a chance at winning in West Virginia. But at the same time, it's a presidential cycle, and even though Manchin's going to do really well with coal miners, and for a Democrat is going to, and he's going to do just well for a Democrat in West Virginia these days. You know, I think that it's going to be too much for him. I think that the fact that it'll be a presidential year and there will be a lot of polarization. I think that that's not going. I don't think it's going to be enough for Manchin. I think it'll be too much for Manchin to overcome, but I do think he has a better chance than people are expecting. So West Virginia, I'd say that's probably the most likely flip. The next one is Montana. I go back and forth between whether or not Montana's a better pickup opportunity for the GOP or West Virginia is. Obviously, Montana is light years bluer than West Virginia, but it's still a pretty red state. And the incumbent Democrat here is John Tester. He has not decided if he's going to run for reelection. I think he's going to, but crazy things have happened before. Um, he has not put out a statement yet saying if he was going to run for reelection. I think he said he was waiting for the midterms, watching the midterms to see, how well Democrats did, and they did do pretty well. So I do believe that Tester would run. Or will run for reelection in Montana. The reason why I think he might be more vulnerable than Manchin is because unlike Manchin, Tester's not the most pragmatic Democrat. He is the third most moderate Democrat in the Senate behind Manchin and Kirsten Sinema of Arizona, which we'll talk about in a minute. That's on this list, but the reason why I think Tester might be more vulnerable, well, I already gave you that reason. Tester, he's a moderate. He's very, he votes with the Democrats most of the time, a lot more than Manchin and Cinema, but he does have, his occasional, breaks with them, like, his vote against banning fracking, or, his vote for the Keystone pipeline, some things like that that are very crucial, very, very important voters to very important to Montana voters. I think he's pro gun. He's he votes for gun control, but he is in a pretty gun toting state, and I think that he does have a really good chance at re-election, just like Manchin. And Republicans, I think, could mess up this race. There is one candidate right now that looks like he's going to run. That's Ryan Zinke. Ryan Zinke, was in the Trump administration, and he actually he used to be a congressman from Montana, but he has come back and he won the first congressional district race this year, but by a pretty underwhelming margin. He only won it by about 3 percentage points. He's a little bit more of a controversial candidate, and I've heard a lot of more conservative election YouTubers kind of caution or be more cautious about putting Zinke up. I think a lot of them kind of see him as someone who had fumbled this race, and I could see it. I think Tester is someone who does really well with blue collar voters, just like Manchin. I think he does very well with the minor, with a lot of minors, which have been traditionally Democratic groups, but Trump has found, and Trump has done particularly well with in the past couple of years. And, but once again, just like West Virginia, there's going to be a Republican presidential candidate, a Republican on the ballot for president. And the thing, with Manchin and Tester winning re-election in 2018 is, yes, it was absolutely impressive, and the blue wave helped them out and all of that. And if 2024 is a blue wave, they could win again. I think it'll be more of a neutral, Democratic leaning environment, but we'll have to wait and see. But the problem for Tester and Manchin, is that they are already in states that are going to be easily won by the GOP nominee at the top of the ticket, while they're 1,000% going to outrun Biden or whoever the Democratic nominee for president is. It may not be enough, and so I think Tester, right now, he's in a really tough spot. And I think he will be a very easy flip for the GOP, but once again, they have messed up in the past before, and Tester absolutely has a chance at winning. I think you guys get a good idea of where my first prediction will be, but it'll obviously evolve. My prediction will evolve, over the next couple of years, and it may change by the time I release it in December. The next target for the GOP is going to be Ohio. Democrats have a really good incumbent here in Sherrod Brown. Tim Ryan had a very impressive performance at the top of the ticket in 2022. He really helped the Democrats down ballot, despite his loss to J.D. Vance. Um, and Brown is a very good incumbent. He, has lucked. I don't want to say lucked out, because he's the only Democratic statewide elected official in Ohio, and that's saying something for how right trending it is. But once again, whoever wins Ohio, whoever's the Republican nominee, for president in 2024, whether it be Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, or someone else, they're likely going to win Ohio by at least a likely margin. And while Brown will definitely outrun the Democratic nominee for president, he is dealing with a state that is trending insanely quickly to the right. Mahoning County actually voted for J.D. Vance by more than it did for Trump in 2020. In Vance's Senate race, which actually surprised a lot of people, including myself, considering Tim Ryan was from the Mahoning area. That's where his district is, and it looked like that he was going to carry it, but he ended up losing it. And while I do think Brown is going to be really good for these working class voters, and he's going to give whoever the GOP nominee is a very good run for their money. This is not going to be an easy flip for the Republicans. I think they might run Frank LaRose, the Attorney General of Ohio, or maybe even Matt Dolan. It looks like he's going to run. But whoever the Republicans nominate here, I do think that I think that Brown is a narrow underdog, but I don't think he's I don't think he's dead on arrival. I think that he could absolutely win this race, but once again, very difficult circumstances. Now, the next target's going to be really big for the GOP, and that's Arizona. Arizona is going to be a bloodbath. This is going to be a race to watch for the ages, because there's going to be a lot of contention on both sides. So, of course, Kirsten Sinema is the incumbent Democrat here. She won in 2018 against Martha McSally, and she's not been the most progressive, or, I would guess you could just say generally liberal Democratic senator in general. been a real hindrance to President Biden and the Democratic Party's goals over the last couple of years. And so she is facing a serious threat from a serious primary threat, and I think that she is going to get primaried. I don't know if she or she will face a primary challenge. I don't know if she will lose. Um, I think that the most likely person to challenge her is Congressman Ruben Gallego, who I would say is, a decent candidate. He's pretty progressive. He's Hispanic, so he can get out Hispanic voters. And I think that he does have a chance to win. There's also going to be a lot of infighting on the GOP, on the other side of the aisle with the Republicans. I think Doug Ducey might run for this Senate seat, but I don't know if he would win the primary, especially if Trump has as much influence over the Republicans as he does now, although it's definitely fading, and I think he would cost Republicans this seat if he ran someone, if Blake Masters decided to run again, or Kerry Lake did, or, you know, or even worse, if Martha McSally decided to run for the seat again. I don't think so. I think they're all done with politics. Maybe not Lake, but I think McSally and Masters are done. And I think, Andy Biggs could be, if Andy Biggs, I think is another candidate that, won't do well in Arizona for a Republican, but I think he could win against Gallego. I don't know about Cinema. I think, he wouldn't be as bad as Blake Masters, but I think he would put off some voters in the suburbs, because of his Trumpy, um, you know, his Trumpy, I guess, I'm not exactly sure what to call it. His, you know what I mean. I guess, he's a little off-putting to voters, less than Masters though. But I think that Arizona is going to be a race to watch. It's going to be really interesting to see the primaries. I think Kirsten Sinema, for the record, does have a chance at winning the primary. Not right now, obviously. The polling looks really bad for her, and if the primary were held today, I think she would get, she would be, whoever, if it was Gallego or whoever, was the front runner, the top primary challenger to her, would wipe her with the floor. But I think, there's a lot of time for things to change, and I think, if Cinema does, kind of get coaxed into voting with Biden, some of the, a lot more of the time, in the next couple of years, I think that could save her in Arizona. But once again, we'll have to wait and see. It's going to be a very interesting race to watch there. The next Republican target, I think, would be Nevada. This one I'm not super confident about. I think this one could get really interesting. Of course, Joe Lombardo is going to be governor, and I don't think he's going to run for Senate, but I do think there's a good chance that he does run against Jackie Rosen. And he did very well in Clark County. He did a lot better than Adam Laxalt in Clark County, and that's, really what got him over the finish line over Steve Sisolak, despite Laxalt losing to Cortez Masto. And but I do think Jackie Rosen's a really good incumbent, and I think some people that come to mind is Mark Amade, I think is his name. He's the congressman from Northern Nevada. I think he would be a decent candidate. I think Nevada also though did adopt ranked choice voting, or they haven't. I don't know if they have yet, but I believe they passed in a referendum to legalize ranked choice voting, or not legalize it, but to use it, so that could spell trouble for Republicans in Nevada, and I don't think they would win against Jackie Rosen in 2024. But things can change, and I think if the GOP has a decent candidate like Brian Sandoval, I think they would win. I don't think that they should put up Adam Laxalt again, considering that he's had a string of losses, and he's an all right candidate. He was definitely not like a Dr. Oz level of bad candidate, but Nevada still has the Reid machine helping Democrats out, even as Reid is up in heaven, unfortunately, because he passed away last year. That came off really wrong. And the final state I think is a top GOP target, and this one's a little bit more of a reach, but I think Wisconsin is going to be another state that the GOP really targets. Tammy Baldwin's the incumbent Democrat here. She's a very interesting incumbent. She's the first lesbian, or the first LGBT, I guess, senator from Wisconsin, the first woman elected to the Senate from Wisconsin, or to the House from the state. So she's a first for everything. She's a pretty strong candidate. She had a really good showing back in 2018 against her Republican opponent, who was pretty much, a no name. And I do think that, this race could be more competitive, but Republicans in Wisconsin did not have a good night in 2022. Yes, they won the Senate race and they won that House seat, but Johnson won, defeated Mandela Barnes by only 1%. I figured he would win by closer to 5. And Tony Evers surprisingly won. And I think Baldwin is a good incumbent, but she definitely could, lose if, Wisconsin does, continue its rightward trend. But I do think, she is a decent, a very strong incumbent. And yeah, but I do think the GOP is going to nominate someone like Micah Gallagher, who's a really strong candidate. He would be a really strong candidate for them. Yeah, he actually, I don't think any Democrat ran against him for re-election this year. He actually won Menominee County, which is in his district. He's from the Green Bay area up here, and Menominee is the county went to Biden plus by like 60 points. So that shows how strong of a candidate Gallagher is. But once again, he did have vote split. There was a lot of vote splitting in that county when I looked at the results. He had an independent and some libertarian and a libertarian running against him. So overall, a lot of weird vote splitting. I think Gallagher would be a solid candidate for the GOP, and he would probably make this a very likely pickup opportunity for them. But once again, don't know if he would win. I think Wisconsin's going to be more solid for Democrats than some people think in 2024. At least on the Senate level. The presidential level, that might get a little dicey, but we'll see. So, yeah, this is just a little preview to the 2024 Senate elections and what states with Democratic incumbents I think the GOP is going to be eyeing up the most. Um, Once again, they really have the advantage in this map. I think that Democrats are, not necessarily screwed in 2024. I think they've got, all of these states are very competitive, and they could end up holding on to the Senate if they have a really good night. But it's going to be very difficult for them, especially when they don't really have any target pickup opportunities to or when they're going to be distracted with defending so much territory. It's going to be hard for them to focus on picking up seats in Texas and especially in Florida. I think Texas is potential if Beto O'Rourke or a good candidate runs against Ted Cruz, but once again, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, 2024 is going to be really interesting. Long ways out. Going to be a really fun election cycle to watch. But again, we got a long ways away. We're a long ways away. And I'll put out my first prediction soon. Hope you guys have a great day. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, click the like button, subscribe to the channel if you did enjoy. Turn on notifications so you don't miss another video like this, and share it with your with a friend that you think might like it, or a fan, or with your family. Just so that we can get some more people on here, because people are the most important thing in entertainment. If you don't have, I'm going on a ramble here, but anyways, turn on notifications, check out my non-political channel, Interactor127, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things politics. See ya.